All right. So now, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jimmy. This is
Morning.
Warren Edwards, and this is Create Matter. And we have our very prestigious guest, Jimmy Galvin. Let me tell you about Jimmy. Jimmy is a composer, visual artist, definitely someone that's on the know and on the rocket up. So, Jimmy, tell us about what's going on with your new projects.
Well, right now I'm just in the studio recording a new neoclassical album,
All
and
right.
I've just been working with a string quartet and soprano voice, and I'm just kind of basically just focused on that at the moment. And I'm also talking to somebody at The Hague who's involved
Okay.
with the former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, who's a famous human rights lawyer, and there might be a possible opening for me to help them curate a show which they want to make sort of worldwide, and it's all to do with women's rights and violence against women. But they've already got some really big people involved, some Oscar-winning actresses and stuff. So that's going to be a really big project. So hopefully that's going to come to fruition. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds.
So yeah, I mean, basically, I don't even really want to be a curator, but people ask me. I'm actually a painter and a neoclassical composer and pianist, so that's what I really, really want to do. So
Okay.
lots of ideas to sort of get that out there, and I want to set up a sort of website which is going to be called the Healing Rooms, which is going to be people can sort of tune in to a particular website. It's going to be available 24/7. It's free. I'm sort
Okay.
of doing it's an art project, but it's going to have like lots of different sacred frequencies. So I'm going to have like piano and string quartets all tuned to like 432 and 852, and sort of get people to really sort of zone out to sort of the whole thing about living in the age of like disconnect and then reconnecting. Because obviously there's a big thing happening at the moment, isn't there, with technology, the whole threat of artificial intelligence, and people forgetting that the actual experience of like interacting as us as human beings as people is a lot more it's a lot more fulfilling and definitely a lot more interesting and healthy. So there's this whole sort of battle going on at the moment, isn't there, with what people are being told to expect. This is how life is going to be for you now, and obviously it's the artists that need to be at the forefront to sort of reclaim that narrative and make that narrative kind of more meaningful. Because
Okay.
obviously if you look at the world events, everything that's playing out, there's a whole sort of obviously this is all about capitalism, and whether it's the war or men behaving badly, the patriarch is still alive and kicking. So somehow, being an artist has a responsibility of being an activist,
Okay.
to not accept these things as norms, because these are just footnotes in the quest for capitalism to sort of take over everything and control the narratives. And obviously we're all aware of all the things that are happening with like suicide rates worldwide, for men under the age of 30 has gone massive. The whole
Okay.
mental health issue. So there are lots of things that need to be kind of platformed and put out there in a really meaningful way. So people are being seen and being heard, and there's a much bigger conversation to be had.
So let's jump into it, okay? Now, you talk about the weight of consumerism, right? You mentioned that humanity is paralyzed by capitalism and social media addiction. In your view, can art truly serve as a defibrillator to restart the human connection, or has the commercialization of art worldwide become too much of the machine to offer a real cure?
Well, this is the problem, because obviously the art world, I mean, the way that the way that 90% of the art world operates, it's like a bank. It's got nothing to do with art. So
Okay.
this is the problem. The whole capitalist system has usurped everything and everybody, and we've all been kind of pushed into this sort of road to think there's only one way. This is how it works. And of course, we know it's not working. Just look at the world state of affairs and and what's going on. So I think the whole thing about art these days for the past 10 years, it's become like a passive consumer experience now. People are being asked, what's your practice? It's like the whole thing is reversed. It's like we used to vote for politicians to make public services run on time, to help public health services. That's all changed. Now we all get told what to do and what to think, and we're going to do this, and that's it. So there isn't a conversation anymore. So the whole
Okay.
thing about the art world is, I say that there's only sort of like 10% of people that are completely authentic. If you look what happened in the 60s with, like, even in America, the counterculture revolution that was kind of platformed by artists and involved people like Timothy Leary, when they were speaking against the Vietnam War and stuff, there was a whole sort of revolution that was going on about how people are going to live their lives and this is how it can be. Now that's all completely changed. So artists now are sort of almost treated like second-class citizens. People are not interested. They're only interested if you're making money. If you look at what happened, last week at the Met Ball, with Jeff Bezos buying, taking over the Met Ball, he sponsored it, right? So there's
Yes.
been a lot of contention about why Anna Wintour did that, blah blah blah, and it's just interesting. It's like he's got so much money that he can buy the value of culture now and tell you what the value of culture is because he has money. But
Okay.
obviously, we all know he has absolutely no taste. This is a power play. And the art world has kind of bought into that, and it's been doing it for 20 years. But if you look at the actual of what's going on, say in the past 2 years, loads of major galleries are really struggling. Lots of major galleries in London, some of the biggest galleries have gone bust. I just read recently another one, Simon Lee, just went bust for £40 million. Now, how can someone go bust for £40 million? That tells me they don't really know anything about art, because if they did, they wouldn't be going bust for £40 million. So artists need to sort of usurp and take the power back. We need to stop apologizing, and we need to stop asking for people's permission, because real artists don't do that. Francis Bacon never did it. All the greats, they don't give a shit about any of that stuff. But now everyone's become yes or no. So they can't wait to tell you their crappy little theory, but there's absolutely nothing going on. And 90% of the work is awful. So this is capitalism. This is how it works,
Okay, so all right, you emphasize the need for authentic expression over current commercialized state. How do you think we can implement some of those changes?
Well, we need to re-educate the curators, because basically most of the people that work in galleries these days, even in the top end commercial galleries, the Guggenheim, these people, they're administrators, they're not artists. The whole point of being an artist is you're taking a risk. You hate the system. You're not trying to play this system. You're just trying to use the system to get your message across. But these days, everybody, as I said, this is all down to money. Most galleries, even the Guggenheim, they're guilty of it. All the galleries, they only work with major commercial galleries now. They won't take a risk. I remember reading years ago, a former director of one of the big galleries in New York turned down Jean-Paul Basquiat because she didn't get it. And he was a young black guy, and he had attitude, and she didn't like it. But she said 30 years later, I made a mistake. Exactly. So I see the sort of same thing playing out. So if you look at all the major exhibitions that happen in all the major galleries in the world that are there for public services, they've been usurped by the gallery system. They will only show an artist that's got signed to a major gallery. So they're not interested in telling and showing art. They're interested in showing money and power. And I see it happening all over London. It's the same thing. It's happening. This is what they've got to change. So if you think of like the 60s, people used to put on really radical art shows. They would platform people like Gustav Metzger, who was one of the founders of the Green Party in England, who was a really radical artist. The Tate Gallery did a big show just before he died a few years ago because they were guilty. But if you just look at what all these galleries are serpentine, what they're platforming, it's got nothing to do with art. Honestly, it's bullshit. And this is the sad thing about it. And it's not offering people a way out anymore of an alternative universe, which is like, this is about all of us. There's no us and them, there's just us. But this is the problem. Those people want you, they want the us and them, because it means that they have the power. So for me, art institutions have failed. They failed everybody completely. Now and again, they will show a person of color, which is great. There's a good show in London at the moment with a black artist, and that's brilliant. About time. But they shouldn't just be doing it now. They should have been doing it 30 years ago.
Okay, so you referenced Carl Jung's individuation theory as a
Yes.
starting point for evolution. How has your own process of self-reflection changed the way you approach your medium since you began at the age of 5?
Well, obviously there isn't any destination. This is all like a work in progress. It's all about the journey. So the
Okay.
thing is, it's like the self-awareness. It's like the cliche. If you have self-awareness of self, then hopefully you have self-awareness of others. And I've
Okay.
always been aware of that. It's just hypersensitivity. But I think, it's like trying, it just sounds like I'm coming at it from like a sort of ego point of view. If I start talking about, myself in that way, I'm not great. I'm human. I have many thoughts and blah, blah, blah. And, you're just trying to make, it's like a calling. I remember I was brought up as a Catholic. I'm not a practicing Christian anymore, but we were Irish, and we had a sort of fundamental upbringing. And people always used to say to me, be open, be ready for the call of God, because if he decides that he wants you, then you have to sacrifice your life. You become a priest, which is what my mother wanted me to become, right? So I used to think inside, God, please no, just leave me alone. I'm going to paint. I'm going to make. So that calling for me was always there. I always knew this is it. I've never sort of thought of myself as an artist. It's just this is what I breathe and live every day, and this is it. And that, you know, that's it. It's just like it was always there. I never put it there, you know.
So you stress that being a better human being is more important than the artistic process itself. Can you
Yes, it
share
is.
a
Yeah.
moment where a simple act of kindness or community connection directly inspired a specific piece of your work?
Um, Not, yeah, specifically, I'd say I made a piece a few years ago that had, it was a big canvas with lots of bullets, and it was called Hiroshima. And
Okay.
that was all about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because I've been to Japan and spent time there, and just sort of thinking of like the American footprint of like imperialism, and you know that John Berger that wrote about it, and also um, that amazing journalist. What's his name? He was amazing. John Pilger as well. Sorry, yeah. He made a film in the 1980s called The War on Democracy. So that definitely inspired my work. Some of his writings and his activism. He was a major journalist, Australian, but he lived in England. But his whole thing about talking about the Vietnam War and how America, in the past 50 years, have invaded like 49 countries, and we do this in the name of democracy. But who's the real enemy? So this is what art needs to sort of address. And Yoko Ono was the last sort of person to do it, I guess. She was the
Okay.
one sort of strength to say, as a woman, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what's going on. And she was the kind of Theaster Gates, obviously, sort of doing some good stuff. But I think it needs to get a lot more radical. It needs people seem to shy away from deep conversations. Like if you think of what the internet's done, it's kind of made, it's ironic. It's like the age of communications, but it's actually made the conversation much smaller. So you look at all these people like Elon Musk and all these dreadful people, and now, you know, the world's been dominated by 10 people, and they have an agenda. So the conversation has actually got smaller. And you can see that playing out in you know, with people's mental health, the homelessness situation, the whole thing about spice in America, all these awful metaphors for the world that's been created by this sort of non-caring system that we've all accepted as, oh well, that's capitalism. As long as I've got my piece of the cake, fuck everybody else. And I hate that mentality. And I see
Okay.
a lot of artists just playing into it, and it's about money. It's like all these dreadful people, and I've just seen some of the worst art in some of the major galleries. I despair. I think this has got nothing to do with art. So the
Right.
whole somehow we've got to get that narrative back. It's like, and it's much better to be an activist. And I'm much more impressed with somebody that does something really kind for an animal or a human being than I am about 99% of art these days. You know.
So I wanted to ask you, you just mentioned about animals. You mentioned, treating the environment and animals with respect as a key to our evolution, right? So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
does this ecological responsibility manifest in your visual language, which often focuses on modern political themes?
Well, I suppose this is all about points of view. It's like, you know, people tastemakers, what we call influence now. They all have power. So when you see that thing last week of Billie Eilish, who's got a massive platform, I don't know if you saw it, but last week she made a big statement in America saying that anyone that has a pet but then eats meat is a total hypocrite. Now
Yeah.
she's getting loads of she's had, but lots of people are agreeing with her. So it's just it's as I said, it just goes back to that sort of massive disconnect of like the whole thing about humans. That we become this passive consumer experience. It's like this echo chamber of like of nothingness, and somehow we got to get back to deeper conversations in ourselves. And the whole point of what Carl Jung talked about, the individuation self, is you can't join that bigger conversation until you've had that conversation with yourself. And that's
Okay.
my thing. So it's like going back to Zen Buddhism. People in the West are always prattling on about the soul. Well, if they did a bit, Buddhism doesn't believe in the soul. But in the West, we all quote the soul, and especially in Tibetan Buddhism, which for me is really flawed because it's quite a new religion. It's only 640 years old. It's not very deep. But if you look at the originals like Zen Buddhism that originally came from India, like over 2,000 years ago before Christ, and then it got taken over Japan when it became Zen Buddhism. I mean,
Yeah.
those monks were so deep. They didn't believe in reincarnation. They were hardcore vegans. They believed that everything you did had an impact on anyone around you in the environment. And that's why Zen Buddhism is no longer popular, because everyone's hitched on to the Tibetan Buddhism, which says you come back, you have 7 lives, all that nonsense. So again, it's like everything about the human condition to me seems we've gone to this point of like Soma, you know, Aldous Huxley wrote about it, and it's like this passive consumer experience of non-existence. It's like
Okay.
the big disconnect. And I said, you just got to look at what's going on, the crime rates, the people even America, the people who are being put in prison from certain communities, and how that whole thing is. It's so disconnected. So for me, it's like when you're an artist or a musician, you have this responsibility to say something that's like a glue. You're gonna put this narrative back together again. Because when I look back at my life, I was brought up on a really heavy, like white trash, racist council estate. It was like trailer park. It was really heavy, and it was, you know, I met someone, this girl I fell in love with, who played the violin, and it sort of civilized me. So her parents hated me and they banned me from the house. So I thought, well, I can go through life being a victim, or I can, like most of my colleagues, end up committing suicide or get put in prison, but I'm going to start reading books. So for me, it was art. I went to the Tate Gallery. I didn't know anything about it. I saw a Francis Bacon triptych, and it was like, what? It was like having Jimi Hendrix in my head all in one go. It changed my life. And I came home, I went to the library, I joined the library. I hadn't read a book. I was 20, and I got these books out. I took a postcard from Tate Gallery. The woman said, oh, he's called Francis Bacon, blah, blah. So this is the power of art. And this is what's been taken away, because all the people that run the galleries, even the biggest galleries in the world, it's past their administrators. They're not creatives. They don't take risk. And this is what's gone. And I said, even the Google, they're all guilty of it. They only work with the major gallery system that's already pumped millions of pounds into artists, that's going to put them up there. It's going to get you to say, yeah, it's great, or whatever. So that's what's gone. The whole thing is capitalism. And this is everything that's bad in this world is a metaphor because of that mentality and scenario. And that's the thing that, if you look at what even in England in the 60s, local councils here, you know, the government would get artists involved with building projects. They'd get them involved with council estates for poor people. That's all gone. So that conversation, I said, it's completely been usurped by people with money. And this is what capitalism does. It destroys everything. If you think about, like I said, you know, 10 minutes ago, it's like we live in the age of communications, but look what we're saying, that there's more hatred out there now than there's ever been. That, you know, we're on the verge of fucking World War III if we keep going down the road we're going on.
To you, Jimmy, I want to say to you, thank you for your passion, your commitment to humanity and evolution, and everything that you're doing. So I wanted to know, when can we get a gander of you all across the pond? When are you coming to America?
Well, when you talk to your colleagues at the Guggenheim, yeah, tell them I want to do an installation there of live piano performances as well.
Okay, definitely. So when we doing this cash right now, they'll get a gander of this, and maybe we can put you on, and we can do that.
Good.
So this would be a good start.
Yeah, I want to do a really big installation now. I've got loads of amazing ideas that no one's doing, and as well as amazing performances, but really make it completely inclusive, but not patronizing. Because I've noticed in England we have this thing where people keep talking about diversity and inclusiveness. You don't need to patronize people, and this is what a lot of the institutions are doing. This patron, you don't need to patronize. You just got to make it great. If I play James Brown to any kid anywhere in the world, they're going to get it, because it's brilliant. There's nothing not to get. So you just you don't need to patronize people. You just got to make it amazing.
That's it. Okay, so Jimmy, thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure talking with you and connecting energies and sending that good, positive energy out in the world.
Yeah,
so, everyone, I'm Warren Edwards. That was Jimmy Galvin. And we're here to raise humanity and evolution. This is Create Matter. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Thank you, Warren.
All right. So, to the next time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Take care now.
All right.